And today, my guest is no other than Frederik Moss Nielsen. He has many achievements, many accomplishments. He is a pretty well-known name in Europe and especially in Nordics. He coached Sweden's national team under 19. He is pretty active with the ELF and now AFE, if I'm not mistaken. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but first, let me welcome him. Frederik, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Utku. It's nice to see you again and nice to be here on your show.
I'm super grateful that you joined today. I have a lot of things to ask you, but let's start with the most iconic question that I always start with. Who is Frederik Moss Nielsen?
It's a good question. I would say I'm just a guy who loves football. Especially, it's one of the things that I've really impacted my life in many positive ways, and it's really taken me from a lot of different places around the world. But in general, I think I'm very passionate about the things I do. I would say very hardworking, very passionate, very dedicated to what I do. Yeah, I think that's a short description without going into too many details. I guess we'll get into that. But yeah.
Don't worry about it. I will go into details right now.
Yeah.
And I always start the episode chronologically. Like I'm gonna ask you how it started with you, but for the people who don't know you, who are you now? Like what duties you hold right now?
Right now, I am the special teams coordinator for the Nordic Storm in the EFA, European Football Alliance, which is a new league this year, which is split up from last year's ELF. So if some of you recognize that, then the EFA is a new league, but it consists of former ELF teams, European League of Football teams. So that's what I'm doing mainly right now. I also work as a sports psychologist. I have a master's degree in psychology and specialized in sports psychology. So I work with a local hockey team and a local soccer team with mental performance, one-on-one consultations with players and athletes. So I do that mainly. And then I also study statistics on the side. Getting a master's degree in data science statistics is what I'm doing right now.
It sounds like a pretty busy career. I actually knew about the soccer team, about sports psychology aspect of it. I knew about the soccer, but I didn't know about the hockey. Just out of curiosity, is it the Swedish National Team or is it some private clubs?
It's the local Malmö Redhawks team. So it's within their sort of high school academy program that they have there. So it's their feeder program to their professional hockey team. And obviously the Swedish Hockey League is arguably the best hockey league in Europe. And so their high school program basically feeds into that. And it's one of the more, I think it's the most competitive junior leagues in all of Europe. So I work with those teams for the last, what is it now, almost 4 years. So I've been there working with that sport. It's been very rewarding, very exciting. I played hockey before I started playing American football. So I do have that kind of background there. So I kind of know about the sport, but it's been fun working with another team sport. And I love team sports in general. It's, you always got to put the team first, and I'm always in that mindset that I got to do my part for the team to have the success that we want to have. So I feel at home in team environments where it's a collaborative effort. It's not about this one guy here, one guy there. Yeah, one player may be having an impact in certain moments during the game, but that individual could never get there without the help of the entire team. And that's why I enjoy team sports so much and being a part of it. So it's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. But have you ever had any experience with any individual sports, maybe?
I have a little bit. I have worked with some individual sport athletes. just from a sports psychology perspective and working with their mental performance. But and it's mainly just been team sports that I've been a part of myself. I've never played like an individual sports. It's never really attracted me in a way, I guess. Like when I've tried out the sports, I always felt more at home in the team environment where you have other people around you where you're kind of working together. And it's a different kind of environment. You know, if you're an individual athlete, you got to be comfortable with being alone in a lot of different spots. Maybe you have your one coach, or you're part of a team of individual athletes, but you're on your own, right? You don't have anyone else that relies on your performance.
Yeah, I always wanted to ask you this because I'm pretty much interested in sports psychology. I read a lot of books, and many books actually gather around more like, that's my feeling, about some individual sports, especially tennis. Maybe like recently I read a book, The Inner Game, that was about tennis, or maybe I'm mistaken, but there was a book recommended by either Federer or Nadal or something. I found out about that on Instagram. Then I read it, and most of the sports psychology, I feel like on an individual sport, you have more of a direct input and output, because the only thing you need to control is yourself and your sport, okay? You're only hitting a racket, maybe some combat sports, okay? You're only fighting against one guy, or your opponent maybe one guy. But when it comes to team sports, there is a vast dynamics of it, especially in football, because football is, if I'm not mistaken, like most crowded sport in the world right now. There are a lot of players, 53, some leagues allow it until 60 players. So there are many more dynamics. And how do you think of the most difficult aspect of sports psychology in American football? Or can you compare and contrast, maybe like, okay, maybe if you're coaching the soccer team, which includes less of a players in numbers, versus when you do some sports psychology stuff in the Swedish National Team, how would that differ between the number of the group?
Yeah. So first of all, you're absolutely right with the individual sports where it's only you, right? So working against one opponent, and you're not so much reliant on your teammate. Maybe if you play tennis, you play duo doubles, right? But that's the only time where you're ever with someone else. So, but a lot of players play the singles, and it's all about their own performance, right? And maybe obviously you're affected by what the opponent does, but there's not three other opponents that can do three different things, right? So I think you can work what I've done, and what I think most of the people in my profession in sports psychology work with. We work in very similar ways. Obviously, there's differences and nuances, and some focus a lot about this one mental skill, and people, use this mental skill to teach. So we all work on mental skills to help the athletes perform. Now, the result of it can obviously be affected by more factors once you go into a team sport, right? My focus also will change as an athlete. So if I work on concentration, like mental preparation for what I'm supposed to do in certain situations, right? The cues are different. So in tennis, I got to cue off how an opponent is aligning, the way he's hitting, so I can kind of predict where the ball's going to go. In soccer, I got to understand where I should be moving when I don't have the ball. When I do have the ball, I should be reading off cues from how defense is playing. Should I pass the ball forward, backwards, depending on that? So there's different cues you got to be able to tune into and work on, teaching the athletes to hold that concentration and essentially, perform when pressure's on, right? There's always going to be difficulties dealing with different negative thoughts, emotions that pop up when you make mistakes, or it's an important game, or there's like some concrete distractions, weather, referee is making a bad call. There's all these different things that distracts our focus from our job, right?
Yeah.
And the way I kind of define mental performance, and I know a lot of people do it the same way, is we're mentally performing when we're able to focus on, you know, our job, our game plan from a team perspective, if we're in a team sport, and acting in a way that's important to us. So if it's really important for me to never give up or work really hard on the pitch, if I'm a soccer player, right, I always sprint back when there's a counterattack, or if I lose the ball, I'm quick to react and try to get the ball back, right? So if that's really important to me, then that's kind of my what people in my profession call the light. I think it's called the light tower. You know, when you're out in the ocean, right? There's a light tower that, you know, can guide sailors when they're in the vast ocean, right? And sometimes it's hard to see where we're going, right? The wind's blowing in our face. It's raining. It's high waves, but, you know, out in the distance, you know, there's that light tower that can kind of guide us. And that's kind of how mental coaches or sports psychologists work with performance, is that we have certain values that can guide us when, you know, things are difficult, and having those really clear helps us, you know, act in that way instead of letting the emotions and negative thoughts decide what we're going to do, right? Maybe I'm scared to make another mistake, right? So then I start to, you know, play more conservative, when in fact it's really important to me that I should be, you know, I should play with passion, or I should work really hard to try and get the ball back. But I start to play more safe. I become less active as a player on a soccer pitch, for example, and that affects our performance. It also is not aligned with who we are as a player. So there's that disappointment that I didn't play the way I wanted to, and why didn't I do that? So, and continuing on, like the difference between like soccer or American football, where there's more players, and it's more obviously 6-second plays, break. You know, in soccer, it's constant flow of a game, right? So you got to be active even when you don't have the ball, or when the opponent has the ball on the other side. Like in football, it's more of, you know, understanding your cues, what you're supposed to be looking at. You know, before the play, I'm looking at the defense, how they're aligning, so I can kind of predict the way they're going to play, right? So, but if I'm too nervous, if I'm too, you know, scared to make a mistake, maybe I start to focus more on just my assignment. Well, I got to block the guy in front of me, so I just look at him, right? And instead of, you know, looking at the safeties, how are the safeties playing, so I can kind of get a feel for what is the coverage that the opponent is playing. Are they playing two high, one high, cover 3, cover 2? Are they playing a lot of man coverage? You know, but because I'm nervous, because I just don't want to fuck up my assignment, I only focus on that part. So I'm not really looking at the whole picture, right? And it's, but if it's important to me that I can be a versatile player, I can, you know, help in the run game, I can, you know, run my routes, get open, all that things, then I need to be able to cue off these things. So teaching, you know, just those kind of skills to be able to handle that kind of pressure is kind of what we do. But it's context based, right? So it's really important for a sports psychologist to understand the context.
Yeah.
And you know, that comes with experience. And so that's some things that I've had to learn when I work with soccer, which I'm not so used to working with. It's easier to jump into American football because I understand everything that's important in, you know, looking at or understanding when it comes to a football context. And that's also something we talk a lot about when it comes to individual work or teamwork in sports psychology, is you got to understand the context of what should we do, you know. And because like in soccer, you want to work hard, right? But you can't sprint for 90 minutes. You're gonna
exactly,
like, it's impossible. So
you got to strategize your efforts.
Exactly. And, you know, just because a guy is jogging on the field, you know, in American football, if you're jogging on the field, that looks stupid, right? Because you should never be jogging on the field, like, unless you're a quarterback that maybe handed the ball off. It's fine if you're, you know, if you're jogging. But most of the times you're sprinting for 6 seconds and then the play's over, right? There's no reason to be jogging. You should be getting, if you're a defensive player, there should be 11 players running full speed to the ball, right? Yeah. But in soccer, you know, you may have a moment where you sprint, but then obviously maybe you knock it off when the ball's past the other side and you're trying to get in position so that the team is in the right formation, or however you want to play against a certain opponent, right? So it's understanding, like, it looks different. And just because a guy's jogging a little bit doesn't mean that, now he's not acting in a way that, aligns with his value of maybe working hard, right? So,
yeah.
But as soon as there's opportunity to work hard, then I'm doing it, right? And that's, contextual differences. So when I'm evaluating my own performance, if I'm performing mentally, one, am I, focused on my game plan, and am I acting, in line with my values, right? Yeah. So if I'm doing those things, I would say that we're performing mentally. Now, I may mess up, if it's a soccer, if I'm receiving a pass, right, and I'm not really, handling the ball correctly and I'm fumbling it, then that's a technical skill, right? That's not, maybe I am focused on the ball. Maybe I am cued in on everything I need to be, but I still, I haven't developed that technical skill. So, and that's why, sometimes it's easy for like fans to say, well, now his mental is not there, or like, he's not performing mentally, or there's something wrong in his head or something, like he's thinking too much. Well, you don't know that, right? I don't know what you're thinking, Utku. You don't know what I'm thinking right now. Exactly. We don't know what's going on in people's heads. So I think that's something that I've learned throughout this, that, we don't know what's going on in people's heads until we ask the person. And that's something I bring into my football coaching, that, if I got to understand why a player decided to do something or why he messed up, I can't just assume that, he, actively made a decision to do something stupid, right? Or maybe he's not focused, or whatever it is that's doing that he's fucking up, right? So I got to ask the person, hey, I try not to also get in the player's face during an emotional time, right? So as a football coach, if it's a game, I usually try to let players get off the field and grab some water so we can have a calm, collected conversation about what's going on and why we're not succeeding in what we want to succeed in, right?
Yeah.
So just having a conversation and just asking open questions like, what happened on that play? And then letting the player talk. Well, I didn't see the safety coming down in the blitz, and that's why I got sacked as a quarterback. Well, then it's about, the quarterback's ability to scan the defense, and then I know how to coach it.
Yeah.
I assume that, he did something, and I'm not letting the player get to that point, then I'm not really tuned into what my players are good at or bad at. And so all this has kind of, helped me become a better coach in a sense. And so,
yeah, on that sense, I want to interrupt a bit, because as a starting point already, I experienced that, because for those who doesn't know, I came to Malmö for my master's. Then I played football there for 2 seasons, a bit maybe like 3 seasons. But there, the first thing I mentioned, the first thing I realized was that everybody was so supportive of you. And right now I'm playing football in Turkey, and like the biggest difference between, let's say, the Swedish culture versus the Turkish culture is that most of the times when you make a mistake here, like middle of the play, you make a mistake. Sometimes you're covering a guy and the guy caught the ball. Okay. And everybody on the sideline, hey, play better, do better. Come on. Like, and my first, the initial thought is that, don't you think I'm trying to do better? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's assuming that, okay, maybe like the way of the language is supportive, but on your mind, on athlete's mind, most of the times it's not. And then the biggest advantage when I was playing in Sweden was that nobody was, shouting at me. Nobody was, busting my ass. They were actually, I think in the sports psychology language, it was called like giving me freedom to perform. They don't make me dependent on external validation, because once you start building up that culture, everybody is trying to, push each other, but it's kind of toxic, because every time you make a mistake, hey, do better, or, come on, like, you can do better. Of course, I know I can do better, but when you give the athletes the freedom to perform the way they like, I think it gives them better opportunities to perform better. So on that sense, I really wonder about your opinion, because on the last 10 minutes, you mentioned about pressure. So I know that's an all-around word being thrown out every time when we talk about sports psychology. You yourself how is your experience with pressure on your own self during a game? And what do you think about other players think about pressure, and how does it affect your game? Or some people say, like, sometimes you see some posts on Instagram, they say pressure is not real, Michael Jordan, or pressure is a privilege. It means that better things are expected of you. And very valuable thing you just mentioned, like a couple minutes ago, you never know what's on other person's head. So combining all these things, what do you think about pressure, and how do you help an athlete deal with pressure? Or maybe is there any time the athlete doesn't even realize that they're under pressure, or maybe they're dealing with it quite right on their own head, but maybe they're messing up, and you just interrupted the situation and you help them get better and play better under pressure? Did it ever happen that way?
So first part there, you talked about my own experiences with pressure. Are you talking from a coach perspective, or like from my own playing days?
I want to hear about coach perspective.
Okay,
Because you know that thing, like the dilemma, like I see you as a doctor, sports psychologist, doctor, but don't you ever have your own struggles about you? Sometimes you're having a super tough game, man. Sometimes like maybe you're in the semifinal against Vienna Vikings. Don't you feel pressure?
Absolutely. I think pressure is inevitable once you're in a field where things matter a lot to you. We spend so much time as athletes, as coaches, to prepare all off season and all season long. We work through the entire 12-game season to get to a semifinal, and you're standing there, and there's 6,000-7,000 people there at that game, and there's it feels like a million of those horns that are just so loud. I think pressure is inevitable. Now, the way people express what pressure is, I think depends on your understanding of the technical term. Obviously, like for me, I can kind of try and define it in one way, but if I just ask the person who's never taken a sports psychology course or even a psychology course in their entire life, they would explain pressure in a different way. And that's fine. Like, people experience pressure in so many different ways, whether it's a lot of thoughts that come in their head, whether it's, a lot of different feelings or emotions in their bodies. So it comes out in many different ways. And as a coach, obviously there's pressure. Like, I got to do my job as a special teams coordinator. I got to be counting my guys, got to make sure the subs are working efficiently. I got to be looking at the opponent, what they're doing special teams wise. I got to communicate effectively with my players about the adjustments we're making, because I'm tuned in and focused on doing my jobs. If I get too caught up in being a spectator because I'm nervous, I don't, that affects my performance, and then in turn affects the player's performance. So I also work with mental performance and as a coach in American football. And in American football, I think I would say is one of the sports where the coach has the most direct impact on the game during the game. Now, coaches are important in every sport, right? They have an immense impact on the result of the game. But in American football, you're so in tune to, the play calls you're making, offense, defense, special teams. And it has a direct impact, right? So for us as coaches, we got to mentally perform, right? We got to, stay focused on the job. And it can look different ways. It could be the way our head coach looks. He gets very passionate about the game and he loves football, but he's still focused on his job, right? Like Coach Shoop, he's very passionate and it shows on the sideline. But Coach Shoop, he's so routine and he can pick up on the cues so much faster than everyone else, right? So it comes out in many different ways in the way you experience pressure. I forget the second part of your questions.
The second part of the question is like, how do you define pressure? And let me give you an example. When I put myself back in the days, let's say my first or second or third year in the American football, all it gets into my mind when I got thrown out in the field, I'm I'm backup player. Sometimes I get the chance, maybe in the kickoff, maybe kick return of some special teams. And all I think about is like, I get a shine right now, and I have to do. I think the important cue here is that I have to do what I'm supposed to do. And every time I cannot perform that, it's like, oh shit, I'm a terrible player. You know, that was the initial pressure for me. But right now I'm thinking of way different, like many more dynamics and so on. So my question was, how do you think about the pressure, and is there any examples of, let's say, because we never know, again, I'm throwing back, we never know what is on the other player's mind, you know? So pressure is different for everybody. So as a sports psychologist on the field, let's say you're on your duty, you're coaching the special teams that day, and it's a very stressful day, and a lot of players are doing their jobs pretty well, and sometimes can you pick up the cues? Sometimes the player is feeling pressure even though he doesn't think that it is the case. Can you pick up the cues like that, and how do you perform, and how do you correct, or I don't know if it's the right word, how do you correct the players under the stressful and most pressureful situations?
Okay, yeah. So I want to start with saying that pressure is experienced by everyone again. So even if you say you don't feel pressure, or pressure is a privilege, or however you say it, if the thing is, when we try to perform in a game, for example, if the sport didn't matter to you, you would be like just relaxed and really, really calm, right? And if it didn't matter to you, why are you even doing it in the first place? So we do things that matter, right? And when we do things that matter, there's an automatic response in our body, and it's our automatic nervous system kicks in, because it starts to regulate our body, so it sends more blood to certain muscle groups, because we got to be ready to run fast, for example. So there's got to be more blood flow to our quads, our hamstrings, or whatever muscle group that's important in that aspect. Maybe our arms, just get the blood flowing really faster, and that to do that, the heart has to pump faster, right? So our pulse increases, and that's a completely automatic response that the body has. Like, it happens like even before you're even on the field. When you're running onto the field, maybe if you try to feel your pulse, right, your pulse is automatically going to be higher than it was 5 hours before that, and that's just an automatic response. You can do nothing about it. Now, if it's really high or not as high as someone, it can vary how you react to a game, depending on the experience. Maybe you played a lot of professional games, so you say, well, it's just another day on the field, right? But you're still going to be more tense than if you were when you woke up, in bed. And that's just a natural progression of our nervous system kicking in. So we're going to be more active, and we're going to feel more tension in our body as we go. But let's get back to I think if I've seen a player perform a certain action before, and I know the fact that this player can do this thing, and he's not executing it the way that I've seen him done it, and it's maybe it's a decision to take a step this way instead of taking his steps the way we practiced it, right? So if it's a kickoff return, for example, we may teach the guy to take certain steps when the return is going a certain way. And if he's not doing that the way I've seen him done it in practice, then I know there's, it's most likely something he's being nervous, or he's unsure in the moment because of the pressure. So that may be a point for me to investigate what happened. And then he can maybe he says, well, I wasn't sure, yada, yada. Maybe he doesn't have a good answer. And at that point, then I can start to coach him, maybe say, okay, well, calm down. Like, what is the situation? What's going on? And then I always try to let the athletes come up with the solution themselves, because I'm never the person that's on the field. If I was good enough to play football at this level, I would be, but I'm not. I'm a better coach than I am a player. I believe in my own ability to coach football, and I feel like I'm a pretty good coach. But I can't do what the players are doing. So I got to understand their perspective, what is going on in their head, and from there I can coach. Is it the technical? Is it the tactics that he's not understanding? Did he not see where the ball was going, so he didn't understand which side to protect? If it's like kickoff return, right? So just understanding the athlete's perspective and then coaching it. I can't just go immediately and assuming it's the mental part. I can't. In my opinion, you can't, because then you're assuming, and maybe because the player may already know it. Like you said earlier, like I know I fucked up, right? There's no reason to, just beat down on me. I'm already like beat down on myself. Like I'm already telling myself like fuck, I fucked up, right? And now I have 3 players yelling at me like, "What? Why didn't you make that tackle?" Like the doy, I'm trying to make the tackle, right? I'm trying to do my job, but I didn't. So, and it is what it is. Obviously, I understand the reaction, because everyone's passionate. Even the guys on the sideline are passionate about winning the game. And when we as a team, we fuck up, or I miss a tackle, you miss a tackle, that affects the team's performance, right? So I understand the reaction. What I feel like us coaches and players could do better is understanding that I think, if we really honestly with ourselves have, an understanding that everyone is doing their absolute best, right? Then there would be no reason to yell such a question that why did you do that, or why did you miss the tackle? Like, it's not like I try to do it on purpose, right? I'm trying to do my job. I didn't succeed in it. So what do I need? I need coaching. I need support to get back in it, because if someone else could do it, I wouldn't be on the field. Like if the coaches think I'm the best one to do it, that's why I'm on the field. So why not trust me to do it? And if you don't trust me, then take me off the field, right? And then obviously as a individual athlete, I have to deal with, being benched or whatever. That's a whole different aspect. But if I'm on the field, trust me to do my job. And you may know that, okay, Utku is, let's say you're not the best tackler, but you're really good in coverage. So you may make plays knocking down balls, but you'll miss a tackle every now and then. And that's just because we don't have a better player behind you. Like you're the best player right now at that position, and we trust you to do that job. And we understand that it comes with, the sacrifices, and Utku has his strength and he has his weaknesses. Yeah. And his weaknesses have to be developed over time. And we can't just like magically wish that you are a perfect player now in the moment. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question the way you phrased it.
You gave me a lot of valuable insights, actually, and I want to further develop the conversation here, because it's I'm really interested in sports psychology, and I want to learn from you a bit. Up until now, we described a lot of intangible things, pressure, sports psychology, and so on. Let's do it on a more tangible thing, okay? I want to focus on, let's say, a case study on me. So some days, okay, I'm gonna bring a new word which is thrown out again quite a lot. The word is flow. Okay. So sometimes when I look back in my career, some days I was playing so good, and I was able to make plays that I never thought of making. I never knew I was able to do that. Sometimes like a crazy interception, sometimes like a very tough tackle. I'm flying around, and before the game, if someone asked me, hey, would you imagine yourself doing the tackle? I mean, in a sort of way, yeah, of course, I'm confident, okay? But in reality, like my let's say, nervous system or my brain, I don't think my brain thinks of me as that sort of a player, because I never did that best tackle, best interception yet, before the game. Right. But when the time comes and when you're in flow, and somehow, I don't know how, you don't think about anything, you just allow yourself to fly around the field and trust your reflexes. I think I call it my reflex, or I don't know, like trained nervous system. Some people call it that way. When I look back on my interception, let's say, I don't even remember the proactive decision that I'm like going for the ball or some good tackles. I don't even recall like the proactive. I don't think about it. I just do it. I just do it, right? But some days, whatever, like how much I try, I don't get into flow. So the first question is it your job to get me in a flow? Yes or no? But the thing I want to learn from you, how can I get into flow more easily?
It's a great question. I think if someone had like a, I want to take a step back because I think this is, there's a whole, I think industry that deals with, how can we, the most easiest, simple way, get in the flow state so we perform well. And it's called the, pseudoscience. And there's a lot of, self-help, mental coaching books written by non-sport psychologists that try to make a lot of money off this industry because maybe they've been a professional athlete themselves. And so in that way, they have the insights or the 5 key things that you need to do to get in flow every single game and perform like I did. And if you, like myself, have a scientific university degree, you understand that anecdotal, it was what I wanted to say. That is the lowest level of generalizing evidence to apply to another person. Because it may have worked for you, and that's great. Like I'm not disputing that it didn't work for that person. And it's a great learning experience. We can get a deep dive into that person, how he worked. But it's not a great tool to implement for ourselves because we're a completely different person, right? We have completely different personalities, which affects the way you interact with the environment and the way you are just naturally in any environment. Well, now let's get into how can we kind of, get in the flow state. I think back to your example of, making an interception, feeling like you're in the flow compared to when you're not in the flow. I think it's a combination of a lot of things clicking on that one day. And there's definitely things you can do to help yourself be ready to perform mentally and to increase your odds that, you can, act in a certain way that helps you make an interception, right? But if a quarterback never throws the ball to the receiver you're covering, this is a classic, argument in the National Football League in America where if you're cornerback and the quarterback never throws it your way because maybe he thinks you're a good corner, you're not going to get a lot of interceptions, right? Maybe we can look at, how many receptions did the receiver have that you covered the whole game, and that's a different type of stat. But like when it comes to interceptions, it's a different stat, and it takes the fact that okay, well, the quarterback has to decide to throw the ball to you, so that's something I can't control. Maybe I'm really good at covering certain routes because I'm fast, right? I'm good at covering deep posts or deep fades because I have speed. That's something that helps me in those aspects. And maybe I'm not good at covering other routes because I don't have the spot drop technique to get to a spot and then quickly get downfield to make a good tackle or something. So there's the technical skills that is really important. And then there is the tactical skills, understanding my role in the coverage. And I think everything needs to click: the physical, the tactical, the technical, even the social, right? The way I communicate with my teammates on the game, like what coverage are we in? What should we do in this situation? Like there's some motion coming our way. What coverage should we check? If we're not communicating and having the social aspect there, then we might be in the wrong coverage, right? And that's also important. And on top of that, the mental. And when everything clicks, I think we have the best chance of, being in a flow state. So just because everything's not clicking doesn't mean that I'm not performing mentally. It may be other aspects that are affecting it. But let's get into how can we try and help ourselves be in a flow state. Again, like I talked about, I think it's important to have really clear values and what it means for you to play football. Like what kind of player do you want to be known as? So I would start with making it really simple and asking you this question here. Imagine we're at a banquet, a football banquet. You've played 10 seasons for this team, and we're having a team banquet. But during the team banquet, we're also going to have a period where we thank Utku for all the years he played for the Griffins or a team in Turkey, for example. And there's a coach who's going to, maybe it's me, maybe it's some other coach who's going to hold a short speech. And what would you, Utku, like for him to say about you? What words would you like him to describe you with? And it, words and like descriptions of you, they're not, Utku made that one interception against Kristianstad, that one game. It was a great play, but I think what people will remember you by is your dedication, like your hard work, and your passion on the field. That's some ways that I would describe you as a player.
Yeah.
And it may not be the way you see yourself, but that's the way maybe it came out when I looked at you play and the way I think about you as a player. And I think that is something to, okay, well, if I have really clear values, it's really clear that what I really always want to do. I never want to, give up. I always want to have passion. I always want to be dedicated to my craft. And I may not, be the absolute best player on the field every time, but these three things will help you perform. Yeah. Because even when you fuck up a play or two, you can always get back to the fact that, well, I fucked up, but I always want to, come into every play passionate and working hard and being ready to come downhill and make a tackle, for example.
Yeah.
Even if you had a bad first half, in the third quarter, when the opponent throws a flat route to the tight end or something, you're coming down full speed and hitting him because you're working hard and you're passionate and you want to make tackles, for example.
So bringing to the essence of the conversation and turning back to the question. Yeah. So from a perspective of sports psychology, you mentioned about like two things. First, it's better to identify who you want to be as a player. Like, what do you think of your career? How do you want it to look like? And on the coin side, there is the opinions of others of you, like your teammates, your coaches and stuff. And is it better to align them as close as possible? Should I understand this from the conversation?
Yes, you can't have, it's really difficult if your values don't align with team values, like your personal values. Is that what you're saying, right? Like
Yes. Yeah.
So that's also important, right? Like that's where, a player may not fit the team's scheme or values the way, want to play. And that's where mismatches can arrive. And it's just not a good fit overall for the team, right? And sometimes you have to go to another team to find, your perfect fit, right? Like he fits in the scheme, he fits in the culture, everything, because he's aligned in the values. And I think it's really important that you can do that. And if you can't, then you have to find another team to play for, unfortunately, because if you can't, the values are kind of, it's core values. It's what's the most important to us. And if we're willing to bend too much on values, then it's nothing important to you. Like something's got to be important to you as a person, right? No. And I respect everyone's ability to choose their own values. Like as a sports psychologist, I never force any values on any particular person. Like that's always up to them. And we're always trying to identify them and so that the athlete can, feel like this is important to me. Well, awesome. Let's, is there a way that aligns with the team values, for example? We're trying to get those things aligned. So that's super important that there is alignment there. It doesn't have to be clear alignment, but we can't be walking in two different directions, right? Then it's just not going to work.
Exactly. That's the difficulty of the team sports, in my opinion, because like, let's say we have 53 players, we cannot have all 53 of them with different ideas and values, right? There should be, of course, like there's their own personality, but in my opinion, a championship winning culture has to align on a singular mentality and a value and a unit, Yeah. And I think it's very important for a sports psychologist, or let's say, I don't know if your title is sports psychologist in Nordic Storm, but I'm sure you're contributing as much as you can with knowledge that you have about sports psychology. It's better to align players and get them together to that idea of the championship winning culture. So, Freddie, thank you so much about the consultancy session here.
Yep.
I learned a lot from you, but actually, the main goal of the podcast is to get to know you. And I think that will illuminate some answers for me as well. So I'm going to have an interesting question for you. So we talked a lot about purpose and the personal values and so on. Can you take us back to your first experiences with the American football, probably as a player? So I want to learn, what was your first why getting into American football back then? I don't know how old you were when you first started, and take that on one hand, and what is your why today?
So I started playing American football when I was 12, and back then I played hockey, like I said earlier. So I started, playing football because I had, some friends in middle school who, wanted me to come to practice, and I did that. And, I arrived to a team. There's 8 players, plus myself maybe. So we're like around 9-10 players at practices. And I did it because I wanted to kind of improve my, my physical ability to, tackle people, and because that's important in hockey as well. So that was kind of just the initial thing that I wanted to find another way to become physical and tackle harder, because I wasn't good at that in hockey. So that was kind of the why in the beginning. And then it started becoming, really fun to be part of a team and feel important in a way. Because in hockey in Sweden, if at a certain point it becomes really, really competitive, and like in any sport, of course, but it got really toxic to a point where hockey just wasn't fun anymore. And I think a lot of people can recognize that experience, that at a certain point, certain players, there's this toxic culture of, there's the upper class of players and they're better than everyone else, and they're going to let that be known and push down players who are actively trying to work their way closer to being better players, because that's a threat to their ability to still be the best players. So it became really toxic in that way to keep playing hockey, and I just felt more appreciated. I felt that even though it was fun to be part of a team where everyone's important. So, and that's kind of became like my why, that, I'm part of a team. It's super fun to, I have a job and you have a job. And unless we all do our jobs, we won't have success. But when everyone, is working together and we're succeeding, it's not because, I was great that play. It's because we were all great together. It takes every single person on a football field to be successful. And I don't think you can say the same thing in to the same extent in other team sports. Yes, team sports are everyone's important, but in football, it really is the ultimate team sport, in my opinion, where it really takes 11 guys on the field doing their jobs to have the ultimate success on the field. And that kind of, inspired me. I felt like, okay, I'm important. I'm getting seen by coaches. I'm getting coached, and because I matter as a person and as a player contributing to the team. And that has always kind of stuck with me, and I've kind of taken that with me, that I would describe it as, getting to a point where there's no prestige and, well, I did my job, so I'm good. Well, doesn't matter, right? I got to figure out a way for our team to perform. So I describe it as being prestigeless. I think I take that to heart, that, I got my job and you got your job, Utku. Like, I'm the special teams coordinator for the Nordic Storm. Okay. And I believe in myself being one of the better special teams coordinator on this continent. And I trust in my ability to do my job. But I'm not the defensive coordinator. I'm not the wide receivers coach. I'm not the quarterbacks coach. And I always have this underlying assumption or feeling, I guess you could say, that everyone's doing their job to the best of their ability. Yeah. And I'm not there to do their job. I'm there to do my job. And if I don't do my job, then they can't do their jobs, right? Because exactly. we're a whole staff. We're 11, 12 staff members. And it takes everyone, well, great that the special teams did amazing, but we lost the game because, whatever happened. I may feel satisfaction in that my guys, like the special teams unit, played well, but what can I do to help maybe the other guys do their job even better? Like, I got to look at it that way. Is there something I can support the other coaches with? Because in the end, it doesn't matter if the special teams did great, because it's not, and I said it before, but it's not my special teams. It's the team. It's the Nordic Storm special teams unit.
Yeah.
And it's not, J.J. Clark's offense or John Shoop's offense. It's the Nordic Storm's offense, and everyone's equally part of that offense. It's the defense working against them, making them better, right? It's everyone coming together, and it's our offense. It's our special teams. It's our defense, and everyone has their job. And I think the why in the end becomes, I just like being part of something where we can achieve results that could not happen without being part of a collective, basically.
Yep.
And I have a really strong belief in the power of a collective. I really believe that if we all work together in the same direction, align on values, then we can accomplish results that we wouldn't be able to if we weren't aligned and completely in tune with that and working together. And we wouldn't get to the point where we wanted to. So that's where my belief is now. Like, I really love being part of collectives and working together and enjoying that interaction with other people. Because it's not just, saying, go do that job and then that's it, right? I got to build a relationship with an athlete so that I can understand him better and what makes him tick. How do I coach you as a person? How do I coach the backup quarterback in holding the ball? How can I help people get to the point where we want them to be as a player on the field? I think that's kind of what, is what's important to me now and what I believe in. I have other values as well, but, the belief in the collective is one of my deepest and, beliefs right now, that, it's not about me. It's not about that one player. It's about the team and what we do together.
Exactly. So you talked a lot about yourself and your own perspective and journey and so on. And I really appreciate that those lessons, because in my opinion, you are as well a very, very successful coach in what you do. But there is one thing I believe what make us successful is not only our devotions and efforts and so on, but also the mistakes that we experience. Everybody, I believe every successful person on their career, they have one mistake that they maybe internalize, and they told themselves, okay, I should have done this specific thing better back then. So when you especially think about your time with the Nordic Storm, or maybe like higher stages of the national team or something, you can think about as a position of special teams, or in general a sports psychologist. Were there any mistakes that you did? Maybe you got stagnant. You saw someone performing worse. You knew you could have done better to help them, to affect that game's result, but maybe you were so hesitant you didn't take action, or maybe you were calling plays for the special teams. You maybe knew, because you remember one time you told me one thing, like when we won the final against ICO, you said we took a sack to have a safety, to get back in the defense, to get the ball away from the end zone as much as possible. It was super smart play. And after the game, I came at you. I said, how did you think of that play? And you said, risk it for the biscuit. Sometimes, did it ever happen in your career? Sometimes you want, because I know about your personality, you some risk reward ratio on some plays. Did you maybe wanted to play it more risky for the bigger reward, but you hold back and then you lost the game? But maybe you thought about, okay, we could have won here, and you internalize it as a mistake? Or it can be any general context. Are there any mistakes that made you successful?
I think any mistake you make is a learning opportunity, no matter how much it hurts. And I've been in a lot of spots, in a lot of big games over the years where there's been mistakes that I've learned from. And it's just understanding and carrying that with you, because I think that just makes you a better coach in the long run. Making no mistakes, even though it hurts in the moment and you may lose a game because of it. But I think takes an excellent opportunity to improve as a person and as a coach in this context. I don't know if I can think of any specific moments, like you mentioned that game where we're up by. I want to say we were up by at least a touchdown, and we're really backed up, and we decide to just have our punter run around in the end zone and take the safety. So instead of punting and not getting as good field position, we can get a kickoff instead from the 20-yard line and give our defense better field position. So I think that's an example of where I'm kind of in a flow state, because I'm being able to recognize the situation and understand, okay, we're in this situation, what is good right now, and I'm not getting caught up in emotions and just thinking we should just punt it, we should just get the ball away, because I'm stressed and I'm emotional. But just staying calm and looking at the situation, like what is happening right now. Okay, it's 4th and 20 from our own 5-yard line. Okay, should we punt it here, or actually wait? We're up by 9 points or 7 points. I can't remember exactly the score. We can actually take a safety here. That's the smart thing to do, because that's maybe something I think we talked about it before the game as well, about like the potential of remember we can take a safety there and then get a kickoff, right? And it's just being calm and collected and focused. Being in a flow state where I'm focused on my job helps me get to that point. But back to mistakes. I mean, one mistake was, for example, when we played with the under-19 Swedish National Team in 2022 against Austria in Vienna. We obviously came really close to beating Austria in that game. We lost 13-10, but in the third quarter, I think there's a point where we'll start back a little bit. In the game, it's extremely windy in that game. Like the wind is really affecting the ball flight of deep passes, punts, especially because when we're punting in the winds, both us and Austria, we're not punting the ball more than 20 yards. When it's, it goes up in the air and just stops and just drops down. And we're at a point in the third quarter where we sent out our punt returner at the same depth as when Austria was punting with the wind, and he ends up chasing the ball with the wind, which is carrying the ball away from him, and he ends up, that kind of Julian Edelman tip with his hand, and Austria ended up getting the ball back there. Now they don't score in that drive, but that's possession we lose, because if I pay attention to everything that's going around, I could have been better at telling my player, hey, don't chase the ball into the wind. Just let it go, right? Let's just get the ball back. And that's just a lesson of, staying focused and being present in the moment. I think that's a lesson that I've gotten from a lot of different experiences, but by being present and having the mental skill to be present, you can notice these things. You can pick up on these cues that, hey, we shouldn't be chasing the ball in like with the wind on our back, because there's a risk it comes away for us and then we reach, and there's a risk that we fumble, we muff the punt and they get the ball back. So that's a concrete example. In general, it's about being present and being, calm and collected. I think most coaches would benefit and most players would benefit from being able to stay present. Now, how that looks and how much emotion that's involved in that's individual and different. But I think for me, it's trying to stay calm, even though I'm very passionate about football. I love when we do good things, right? But if I get too excited, I get too emotionally invested, then my view narrows, kind of like putting blinders on a horse that's running a race. Like I can't see the whole field, and that's kind of a mental skill that I've learned throughout mistakes. The importance of staying present in the moment and okay, well, what's going on right now?
Yeah. So you would say, as a general lesson from your mistake you learned is the more calmer and present you stay, broader your abilities will be, so you will contribute even more to your team. Am I correct?
Exactly, because I could have coached the athlete better, because that's something that I can't expect an athlete who's in the game flow, running, exhausted, to be able to notice. It'd be great if he did, but hey, he's 18 years old. That's a lot to expect from an 18-year-old to notice. Not the wind is in my back. The ball will come up and be carried away from me. And that's something I could have told him. Hey, don't. If the ball's going away from, don't chase it. Just let it go, and we'll just call poison and get our offense on the field. In great field position, by the way, the ball would have landed on the 50-yard line, and we would have gotten the ball there. Now they get the ball just past the 50 because the ball bounces a little bit back when it hits his hand. So it's just unfortunate.
I also believe like those sort of lessons or mistakes are so much about perspective. So maybe 2 years from now, you will get into a situation precisely imitates the same conditions that you made a mistake before. So if you haven't made a mistake, you wouldn't be able to make it right this time, and maybe the next time will be more important. Maybe that will be the championship game and the AFE. You never know. So I think you should better be all invested and ready to make mistakes, and go all in with all your emotions and everything, but stay present. Okay. So Freddie, thank you so much for the answers, all the lessons and everything. I got pretty good insights, and I think that's even more a deeper conversation that I expected though. But once we start wrapping up the episode, because we're almost there on an hour mark already, it's been such a good conversation. I only have a few more questions to ask you. So we all, like, up until now, we talked about the accomplishments and everything, but I know that there are better teams than Nordic Storm as of now. I would say so because you lost the semifinal last year, and I don't know if you ever played with Surge. I don't think they were in your division. But then when you keep learning from other teams in the continent, what do you focus on nowadays, and what do you think you can do better, either as a special teams coordinator or as in general as a coach of Nordic Storm? So are there any coaches or any players, plays, playbooks, any strategies, tactics that you look upon? Maybe like some plays in Vienna Vikings, because there are tons of different coaches and everybody's approach is different. So nowadays, focusing on the 2026 seasons, what are you trying to improve?
I think, like you said, any good coach will steal a good concept if you see one.
Now, don't steal. We call it get inspired.
However you call it, the important thing is that if it can work for you, why not use it? Exactly. So, and for me, like, I have no problem sharing anything that I do, like schematically or film wise, with anyone that's interested. Maybe not during a season with some of my opponents, but if someone is interested in learning how we do things with the Nordic Storm when it comes to the special teams, I'm an open book. Like, let's talk, let's have a conversation about how we can improve the overall game of special teams, because I'm really passionate about special teams. I freaking love it, man. Like, I love the impact that special teams has on the game. But things that I've been doing like this off season is just, one thing, like you said, watching other teams, how they do certain things. Like, it can be like, I want to improve like our punt return game. So looking at teams that are really successful at punt return and what are they doing specifically. Maybe I want to try and find, some good ways to block punts. So I look at teams that have blocked a couple of punts like during the last season. So looking at those tapes, how are they doing it? Are they doing anything schematically? Is it something technique-wise that the players are doing, or how are they getting to the punter and blocking the punts? And the other thing is that I've kind of learned throughout the first year of coaching special teams with the Nordic Storm is it's obviously so much different than coaching in NCAA, IFAF, special teams rules, because you have the dynamic kickoff and you have different rules for punts. So all the big four special teams units, so kickoff return, punt, and punt return, are so much different schematically than what I'm used to. So in the first half of the season, it was a really, really big learning experience about what works, what are the skills we need to be able to execute that helps us succeed in being good on the big four units. Now we can obviously talk about the field goal PAT kicking game, which was I don't have the words to describe how not good it was, but that's a whole nother conversation. Hopefully we've solved that this year with our new kicker. But I digress. With the just understanding the skills that it takes to execute the plays we want on kickoff return, for example, and working those right now in OTAs, for example. So our on the field activities now we're working on those skills now, which we didn't do that last year because I didn't have the deep understanding of okay, it's this skill that needs to be applied in this situation when we do this kind of kickoff return, for example, or we got to be able to do a certain thing on kickoff to get our guys to not get stuck on blocks and block shedding and all these things to be able to get down and cover kicks, for example. All these things and actually working on them during OTAs, I think, is preparing us much better for training camp and the season, and coming into the season way more ready to execute and giving the players a chance to execute, because it ultimately comes down to what I'm teaching them and what I'm telling the players to do. And if I don't have the knowledge of, you got to be able to do this skill in this situation when these things happen, and I can't coach that, then how is the player ever going to succeed doing it? And how is the kickoff return game going to be good if I can't teach that? So, and I think what I'm really good at is learning from failures and mistakes, and just taking it with stride and be like, okay, well, we made the mistakes. What is actually going wrong here? And just being, it is what it is. We just got to move on to the next situation. And that's why I think we had so much success, especially in the playoffs when it comes to special teams, but the last 1 week before that as well. We had great kickoff returns against, some of the top teams in the league, like Rhine and Vienna. We had better kickoff return average against Vienna. We had better punt average than Vienna in the semifinals. We beat Vienna in all the hidden yards, aspects in that game. You can go look at it. We punted the ball further. We had a kickoff return all the way to the 45 against Vienna, when it never got past the 32-yard line. So we had much better field position than Vienna. Now we did run into a punter in the end of the game, which ultimately cost us an opportunity to go win the game. But it was a calculated risk, right? Trying to block a punt. And so I think the longer time goes, the better I understand what's important to be able to do and how we can incorporate that into our scheme going into this year. And I feel like we're much better prepared to be efficient from day one, and the opening kickoff. I think we're much better set up for success throughout the whole season, rather than just the last part of the season where we kind of started to click and we started to have success in the special teams game. Not that we didn't have moments during the year, throughout the whole year. It's not like we played horrible special teams the first half. We had good moments. It was just, there was always, that one block away or that one guy away from making a play. And now it's okay, well, how can we make sure that doesn't happen? How can I maximize our personnel, our skills, our scheme to set up our players to succeed on the field? And I have a better understanding of how to do that this year. The skills, the personnel that we have, and how to fit the scheme into that, throughout the season. I think it took some time to figure out which players can do what and which players can't do the skills we're asking them to. And if a player can't do the skills we're asking him to, then it's like hitting your head against the wall, keeping him asking him to keep on doing it. So we got better at maximizing personnel throughout the season last year, and going into this year, that's also one of my key focuses. Really identifying, making sure that we put the right guys on the field. And I think it's easier said than done, right? You want to put the best guys on the field, but with special teams, you always got to keep, carry with you that, you can't just, play your starting Mike inside linebacker every single special teams play, because he's obviously one of our better players on the team. but he's got to direct the entire defense so he's got to be fresh, so I can't play him every single snap on special teams, right? So I got to find, people that are subbing in and out on defense and on offense that can contribute, and coaching them up so that we can get value from those guys as well, and have those guys help our team succeed, because they just need the coaching and me understanding the skills and the schematics that fits that, helps them and our team succeed. And that's kind of where we're all right now. We're much better positioned to utilize people's skills, in contrast with our scheme, to have success from day one, I think.
Yeah, the last sentence you said was the pure definition of a coach's job, like the better align people's skills with their expected, results, and I really like it. But as far as I know, you've been coaching special teams for a long time, because like 2020, I came to Malmö and you were the special teams coordinator, and I don't know when you start doing that, but it's 2026 and you're now executing your special team skills and knowledge on a very, very high level, highest in Europe. So the question is, looking back into the day you started special teams coaching, let's say 2020 or maybe even before. So with all the knowledge you gained from sports psychology and overall understanding and the deepening your knowledge about football and so on, when you look back at yourself, but the very first days of special coaching, maybe the first seasons, what do you do differently now? Like all the things happen, like all the national team games, all the ELF games and everything, all the knowledge, you get better and better. Then you look back at your first day and today, like what's the difference? Like what do you do different now?
That's a good question. A lot of things I do the same. I always try to coach with passion and energy when it comes to special teams, because you got to show the players that you care about special teams. I think that's an enormous important thing about coaching special teams. Is if you're not passionate about special teams, why should your players care? There's no reason to, right? Yeah. So obviously you kind of know the way we did it with Griffins, and I'm not going to go into details there because that's a whole nother episode, maybe talking about the way we play special teams with the Griffins. But I would say I think it's understanding the balance between you in the beginning, it's obviously you want to put the best players on the field, but being able to have a good balance between finding guys that can do the skills on the field and execute the plans, and the guys that are maybe not as good at it, but try to coach them up and trying to get more players involved in the special teams plan. Because if it's one guy who can do two different assignments on kickoff and kickoff return, right, but he can't play punt return, so just getting value out of the more players and coaching them up. I think I don't
you don't necessarily need to think about special teams. Think about overall coaching.
I think it's like I mentioned before, just being calm, collected, and present. I think that's helped me enormously. Pick up on cues and learn more from games. Because early in my coaching career, I was a lot about passion and energy, and I'm sure you noticed that when we were, when you were with the Griffins. There's a lot of passion, energy about special teams, and that's all well and good. You need to have passion, but it can't be what's the saying? The most important thing in what you do. You got to be able to analyze what's going wrong, what's going right, and have a good understanding of the scheme and the players, and be able to fit that with what we want to accomplish. And then you bring in passion when it's the right time to do it. And I think understanding when the right time for passion has been something that I've done differently. And so what I would say to my younger self maybe is try to learn like the mental skills to be more present and calm and collected. And then when there's an opportunity to be passionate, just like you are. But being able to look at something as objectively as you can and seeing, does this work? Is there something that I would have done differently here? And why do things succeed? I think that's helped me tremendously in developing as a coach.
Yeah.
The last years.
So would you say, because we talk a lot about passion, and would you say, like, with your thinking right now as of today, you put more value in executing the coach's skills on a higher level, the schemes and technical details and strategizing and like planning everything ahead and so on. Like, it's number one. And then the emotions are very, very good and very effective, but emotions are only a catalyzer to do your job better. Would you say that?
I don't know if I would put it that way. I would say the emotions will always be there. It's just about the way that we kind of live or kind of act with them. So I can be nervous, I can be stressed, I can be frustrated. I can have those feelings within me during a game, for example. But it's about being present and, you know, registering that I'm frustrated. But if I'm present and being able to accept that, the fact that I am frustrated because it didn't go the way I wanted to, but I still have a job to do. Like, I have to, you know, defense on the field and it's second down, right? Okay, where's the opponent? What yard line are they on? You know, is there a chance they may go for it on fourth down? How much time is left in the game? So examining the situations and just moving on from plays that I can't affect anymore. And just keeping on coaching and keeping on doing my job throughout the entire game is kind of what I focus on doing now better than I did before. So that's the way I kind of deal with emotions, is, you know, accepting that they're there, because they will always be there. Like, I think anyone that's been in a high performance area has experienced positive and negative emotions. It's very uncommon for you to not do that. Then I would say, you know, vast majority, like 99% of people will experience negative and positive emotions in high performance areas. So looking back at it, I think like emotions are an important part of it because it does allow you to give even more passion. So in a way, I agree with you a little bit about being a catalyst, like a thing that starts, you know, the process of showing emotions and showing your passion for the game. Because if you didn't have emotions, then there is no passion, right? It's not important to you. So if it is important to you, you will have emotions and they will come out in a strong way. It's just, you know, if we make a great play on special teams, now is the time for me to show my passion. Now I can, you know, clap my guys up, you know, celebrate my guys doing a great play on special teams. But as soon as, you know, those 5 to 10 seconds are over, I've done that, I got to be moving on. Like, I cannot be in that, you know, excited mode, because then I put on my blinders. I'm only looking at the last play and I'm not looking at what's going on. It's maybe we scored a kickoff return touchdown. I got to be looking at the kickoff. How are they playing kickoff return? You know, writing down details, examining. Do I need to coach up my right three to do something differently on this play? Because I can't stay in that moment for too long. It's got to be in, out, basically. And I love experiencing emotions, but I also know that I can't stay in that moment because that affects my performance.
Exactly. It's very clear now. Frederik, very good lessons though. Like, very good lessons. I was pretty interested in sports psychology and the way you combine your career football about, like, because I know you're so passionate about everything. But then before we wrap up, I know we are short in time, but the question I want to ask you before we wrap up. So let me give you a bit context. I was there in Malmö, you know, everything was going great. I knew that Griffins was a super successful team throughout the history. And then one day, it was 2021, and the final game, European final between Sweden and Italy. I came to the stadium, then I saw you there, like coaching national team. Then I thought about, okay, this guy is pretty good, you know, like Frederik Moss Nielsen on the highest level there, you know, coaching the final game. So very simple, but very important question. What separates you from others? Because I know there are tons of coaches there in Europe, but it seems like whatever you do, you seem to do it pretty good. And I think the biggest proof was that you started with the Nordic Storm, like the organization started just last year. And I think that was a surprise that you competed at the semifinal in Europe. So it shows that, like, the talent in Nordics are pretty good. And when it comes to you personally, I want to ask you that question. What separates you? Because I know that in Sweden, Denmark, Nordic, lots of different coaches. Probably Nordic Storm had more applications about the special teams coordinator position, but it was selected to be you. And for the Swedish national team, it was you. And I want to ask you personally, like, what separates you?
Yeah. I think a lot of the things that separate me, like, go back into what I've talked about, like, throughout this, this conversation, is about, first of all, it's I don't think a lot of people pay attention to the mental skills in performance areas where, and I think part of it, what makes me who I am and what makes me good at my job is, first of all, my how much I care about people. I think I really care about players that I work with, and I care about the coaches I work with, and I really enjoy that interaction. I wouldn't say I'm the most outgoing person in the world, and I wouldn't say I'm that's introverted either. I would say I'm kind of balanced in a way, but I feel like once I'm in the football environment, I love being around players and I love being around my coaching colleagues, and I just enjoy that. So I think the first thing that makes me who I am, because it's hard to compare myself with other people because I don't know exactly what's going on in their heads. I care about people around me, and I think caring makes me, work harder to make sure I do my job for them, and that gives me energy and passion for that. So I want to do my job and make sure that I accomplish what I need to accomplish so that players can do their jobs. Secondly, it's also the mental skills that we talked about, I think, is one thing that has, made me an even better coach. I think it's made a huge improvement in my ability to coach football during games. And I think I can't speak for other people, but I know the impact that it has had on my coaching in games. And I think it's been such a game changer for me that I think, I would recommend it to anyone who wants to perform is to work on the mental aspects. And one thing that I do a lot is, working on mindfulness techniques to be present in the moment. So that's been extremely important for me in my performance in being effective as a coach and being present. And thirdly, it's just, my, because, if I'm calm and collected and focused on a assignment, it may not look like, I have, people that are very passionate, they come off as, they care a lot about the game. They're a winner. They hate losing, I hate losing. I hate fucking failing as much as anybody. I just don't show it the same way. So I think, my determination and how much I want to succeed makes me who I am, that, I wanted, to come to Vienna and beat the shit out of Vienna on special teams. And that was, I prepped my ass off for that game. And, I don't think Vienna's had a block punt in how many years, because they're really well coached and they're a great team. And we're about, I want to say, maybe 5 more centimeters, or Luke Glenna having a bit longer arm, and he blocks the punt on Florian Sudi. I think Sudi, at least his last name, the big D tackle, who's a punter. Like, we tip that ball, and we have a guy that's already running upfield. He has a bit longer arm and it's blocked and it's going their way, and we're scoring on that play. Because, I worked my ass off to be prepared for that game, to set up my players to succeed. And I think it pays off when you're able to put everything together like that, and again, it's I may have a great idea, but again, the block that we did against Vienna on that play, I didn't come up with that. I watched another game during that season and I found it. So it's just me being passionate, spending the time and energy it takes to do the job. I'm willing to go the extra mile whenever that's necessary. Like, I will spend an enormous amount of time watching film, preparing, because I love it. I enjoy it. I really, really fucking enjoy football and working with it. So I think those are the kind of things that make me who I am, and make me really good at my job, because I know I'm good at my job and I have that confidence. So I will put myself up against anybody, and I have that confidence. And it's not to sound cocky in a way. It's just my own belief in myself that when I put everything together, I can do my job really well. And I think, you know, one of my big idols in football is Tom Brady, and he's inspired me in a lot of different ways. But one of the ways he's inspired me is there's a great quote by him that he said, if you're not going to believe in yourself, who's going to do it?
Exactly.
And I think Tom Brady is the ultimate example of a guy being that no one believed in. Even though obviously he went to Michigan and he played on a high level and he succeeded there, no one believed in him going into the NFL. He's well enough to get drafted at least, but get drafted in the 6th round. There's 6 quarterbacks taken ahead of him, and not getting a shot immediately. But once he got the shot, he's taking advantage of it. And I feel the same way. Like, I believe that I'm the best person to do my job. And that's, I'm not the best offensive coordinator. I'm not the best special teams coordinator. Or sorry, defensive coordinator is what I meant. I'm the best special teams coordinator, at my job. And, there are a bunch of smart guys out there. I'm not going to compare myself to other people. I just know I'm really fucking good at my job.
Okay.
And that confidence, I think, helps me believing in my decisions also. So when I make a decision, there's, it might not be the ultimately best decision, but I still believe that, okay, this is a good decision. And then I can evaluate after if it could have been done better. And I think too often, people are maybe a little bit scared to be too confident about certain things. Some people don't have that. Some people do. But for me, I think that's important, that you at least believe in your own abilities, because if you're not going to believe it, then who's going to believe in them?
Yeah. That's a pretty good perspective. Like, I didn't expect you to be, because I know you personally, and we spent some time together in the field and so on. You're always very composed, very friendly and so on. But when it comes to your craft, you are dedicating all your resources, mentally, physically, technically, strategy, everything, to making your craft better, and you take pride in that. I really appreciate that. And Freddie, that was a pretty good conversation, man. I learned so much about sports psychology all around. I think this conversation will make me a better player. I really thank you for that. And before we wrap up the question, I always ask this one last iconic question. So it's a rhetoric one. So you don't need to think about it in the real life terms, but the question is that. So think about every single football field on the world, rhetorically. There will be a giant ass billboard, which you can put a word on it, like a sentence or a phrase or something. But the rhetoric billboard, every single field, either flag football, American football, all around the world, and you will write something on the billboard, and everybody will be able to see it. The spectators, the coaches, and the physiotherapists, players, everybody will see your word, see your phrase on that fucking billboard. What would you like to write there?
Oh, that's an amazing question, or rhetorical question, I guess, if you said it, but that's a great question. I don't know. If just one word, you got to pick one word to do it.
Not word, just a sentence, basically.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I would just say we have a great saying with the Swedish National Team that I absolutely love, and in Swedish, it's starkast tillsammans, and it's in English it's strongest together. And it may not be the best thing to put on a billboard, maybe next to a football field, but I feel like it represents kind of the collective, the power of the collective, and that when we work together, we're the strongest. And in that belief, it's something that throughout my time in the national team, I've kind of picked up on, and the more I've worked with the national team, the more I believe in the power of the collective. So I guess, if there's something I would put up on, my home field or a billboard next to it, or any kind of football field, is, we should believe in the power of the unit and the power of the collective. And I think maybe that's a good one. You could put a lot of other things, but I think that's a good message.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really like this question is very subjective, and it really digs deeper on like how you think, like
Mm,
about inspiring other people and showing them some lessons. Maybe like how
mm,
would you like to contribute to their perspective and to their adventure. So I'm
yeah,
really happy to hear Strongest Together, and today you put so much emphasis on being a collective. You know that
yeah,
gemenskap. You know, like
yeah,
the being
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
bringing the community together, and I think it really emphasizes your love about team sports and everything. um all in all, I really enjoyed this conversation so much,
Same.
and we're already above the time limit that I mentioned in the first place, but as I told you, it was a free flow and I really like the conversation. So I spent quite a good time in the last hour and a half. And last, before we wrap up, like, is there anything you maybe wanted to talk about, but the topic never came around that issue? Or is there anything that you want to contribute a bit more? Or is there any notes, things that you always wanted to mention, but you couldn't find the chance? Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think I spoke a lot on certain topics, so I think there's always room to say more on dive deeper into certain topics. But I think for the most part, there's nothing that I feel like I didn't get around to, at least that I can come up right now. Maybe we can dive into another talk at some point about it. But yeah,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I always tell the guests that this episode, this free content, this valuable content will stay on YouTube for a long time. So I
mm,
think the most meaningful thing would be that, so all the things that we talk about today, your journey from past to future. So what will happen with
mm,
Nordic Storm and AFE, maybe the Swedish National Team, maybe you will win some championships there as a coaching staff. So you will always have the chance to look back to this video, find a place that you said some things about some certain aspects of your game and your perspective and your mentality, and maybe the fruitful thing will be you look back on this video and you will see like you achieve them. And I think
mm,
that's such a great personal journey, and
yeah,
that's why I like to I wanted to bring you here to share all these valuable lessons about the mental side of the game. And you know, I know that you're performing at the highest level in Europe right now, and that was very, very valuable for me to
mm,
listen to you today. So everybody, if you watched it until here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, so that I can keep shooting this sort of valuable content. And today I was with the special teams coordinator for the Nordic Storm, highest level in Europe, competing in AFE, right?
EFA, so the
Yeah,
European
yeah,
Football
sorry.
Alliance
Yeah,
is the
European
movement.
Football Alliance this year. I will be taking a close look on your games, Fredrik. And everybody, today I was with Frederik Moss Nielsen. I thank you once again, and I will see you on the later episodes. Thank you.